The rotting teeth of Queen Elizabeth I. The state of Queen Elizabeth I's teeth is one of the many details from her life that has captivated historians, shedding light not only on her personal habits, but also the trends and health practices of her era. Queen Elizabeth, celebrated as much for her political acumen as for her charisma, was known for her public image of strength and splendour. However, behind this image lay challenges, one of which was her declining dental health. Accounts of Elizabeth's teeth, which were reportedly blackened, decayed, and possibly a source of pain later in life, offer a glimpse into dietary and medical practices of her time, as well as the social significance of sugar in Tudor England. Elizabeth's dental woes can largely be attributed to her love of sweets, a vice that she shared with the English nobility. During her reign, sugar transitioned from a rare luxury to a staple among the wealthy. At the start of the Tudor period, sugar was so scarce that only the wealthiest could afford it, and it was used sparingly as an ingredient in medicines or for special dishes on rare occasions. But by Elizabeth's time, England had access to new sources of sugar from the West and East Indies, Morocco, and the Barbary coasts. This increase in supply transformed sugar from a rare treat to a common, desirable luxury, and one that the Queen herself took full advantage of. Elizabeth's love of sweets wasn't unusual, as sugar was seen as a prized indulgence, and in Elizabethan society it became a status symbol. The ability to afford sugar and other imported goods marked a person as wealthy and important, a distinction that was becoming increasingly important among the nobility. Sugar found its way into many dishes in the royal court, including cakes, pies, and confections, and one of Elizabeth's favourite treats was marzipan, a confection made of almond and sugar paste. Marzipan was not only delicious but also a source of artistic expression for the chefs in her court. It was often moulded into elaborate shapes resembling fruits, animals, and other intricate designs, adding a decorative element to royal banquets. As sugar became more available, dental health inevitably suffered, particularly among those with access to an abundance of sweets. Elizabeth unfortunately paid a high price for her sweet tooth. Accounts suggest that her teeth became increasingly blackened and decayed over time, an issue that would have been visibly apparent to her contemporaries. Blackened teeth eventually became associated with wealth and the ability to afford sugar, so much so that some lower-class individuals, hoping to emulate the nobility, would darken their own teeth artificially to give the impression that they, too, could afford to indulge in sugar. Elizabeth's dental care practices, or lack thereof by modern standards, likely exacerbated her dental decline. Initially, Elizabeth reportedly brushed her teeth with honey, likely in the belief that it freshened her breath and promoted a pleasant aroma. Later, with the arrival of more abundant sugar, the belief spread that brushing with sugar paste was beneficial, a practice that must have hastened the decay of her teeth. Toothbrushes as we know them were not in use at the time, and oral hygiene practices were rudimentary, if observed at all. The Queen's dental hygiene routine likely did more harm than good, contributing to the progression of tooth decay over her lifetime. In an era where dentistry was primitive and feared, Elizabeth's dental problems were further compounded by an aversion to treatment. Dentistry in the Tudor era was handled by barber surgeons who lacked the tools and training we associate with dental professionals today. These barber surgeons performed extractions with crude implements and without anesthesia, relying instead on basic methods that were often painful and risky. Elizabeth, like many of her subjects, had a deep fear of those procedures. She reportedly required significant convincing before consenting to have a tooth extracted, going so far as to demand that one of her bishops undergo an extraction himself to demonstrate the pain was bearable. Such reluctance, while understandable given the circumstances, allowed her dental health to deteriorate further, leaving her with an uneven, yellowed, and visibly compromised smile. Descriptions of Elizabeth at various stages in her life reflect both her physical beauty and the toll that her dental issues took over time. In her youth, she was praised for her appearance. At 22, Elizabeth was described as having a handsome face, a youthful and vibrant image captured in portraits of the time. At 24, another description notes that her face was comely rather than handsome, yet she was tall, well-formed, and had a pleasant, swarthy complexion. Her expressive eyes and famously beautiful hands were considered some of the finest attributes. Elizabeth herself was proud of her looks, often drawing attention to them, particularly her hands, which she used to gesture dramatically during speeches and performances. However, as she aged and her dental problems worsened, her appearance became less celebrated, and accounts shifted in tone. By age 32, 7 years into her reign, Elizabeth's modesty about her beauty was reportedly mixed with a sly vanity. She was known to admit that she was never truly beautiful, though she spoke of her appearance often. By the time she reached her 60s, comments on her beauty had grown noticeably more critical. At age 64, a French ambassador described Elizabeth as very aged, long and thin, with very yellow and unequal teeth. The German traveller Paul Hensner, who saw Elizabeth at age 65, painted an even harsher picture. Her face is oblong, fair but wrinkled, her eyes small, yet black and pleasant. Her nose a little hooked, her teeth black, a fault the English seemed to suffer from because of their great use of sugar. She wore false hair, and that red. Such observation suggests that Elizabeth's dental condition was severe enough to catch the attention of foreign visitors and became a noticeable part of her appearance in her later years. While these descriptions can be revealing, they must be taken with a degree of caution. There are only a handful of surviving accounts that mention Elizabeth's teeth, and the overall impact on her dental health, on her legacy, is relatively minor compared to her other achievements. It's possible that her dental issues, while notable, were not as prominent or debilitating as some accounts suggest. Elizabeth's legacy as a formidable ruler, a symbol of English pride, and a patron of the arts, has largely overshadowed those anecdotes about her physical appearance. In sum, Queen Elizabeth I's dental troubles reflect the broader context of her time, illustrating both the changes in English society's diet and the limited medical knowledge of the era. The rise of sugar consumption during her reign brought both pleasure and pain. As Elizabeth and her court enjoyed newfound culinary delights, they also suffered the consequences of excess. Her reluctance to undergo dental procedures, her preference for sweets, and her belief in dubious hygiene practices are elements that highlight the complexities of life in Tudor England. And while her blackened teeth may have marred her appearance, they did little to diminish her impact as a ruler. Elizabeth remains one of the most celebrated and influential monarchs in history, her reign remembered for the strength of her character, the growth of English power, and the flourishing of culture in what became known as the Elizabethan Golden Age.